We're here with Pastor Wallace Bornhuse of All Saints Lutheran Church. Thanks for having us, Wallace.
It's great to have you here. Welcome. Would you guys like to come in?
Sure, yes. So tell us a little bit about the Lutheran faith.
The Lutheran faith is it started back in the 1500s when someone by the name of Martin Luther had some issues with the church at the time, and so decided to challenge some of those by writing up 95 theses that he put on. Some say he nailed to the cathedral to make his point that they need to see some change in the church. After years of dialogue, a group of reformers separated and they became Lutheran. And so that's kind of how the Lutheran Church started. It was in the 1500s. And now today there's millions of Lutherans worldwide that are practicing the Lutheran tradition in different ways. We have a global organization called the Lutheran World Federation, and so it's a Protestant form of Christianity that basically allows for, that's kind of, I like to call a mix between Catholic and kind of Reformed church tradition. So meaning that in a lot of Lutheran churches you'll see a very traditional liturgy, meaning type of church service that's very structured, and yet there's also, when it comes time to our understanding of God, it's a little more to the Reformed side, I think, than to the Catholic side. So that's the best way of putting it. If you know Christianity at all, you kind of know the very traditional versus the very modern. Lutherans are kind of in the middle.
Perfect. So this is your worship area that you worship on Sunday? It's a beautiful space.
Yes, this is. It's one of the more modern spaces you'll see in the Lutheran Church. It was built in 1991, so it's a fairly new building for Lutheran churches. A lot of Lutheran churches are a lot older than this.
And it looks like you enjoy some good music as part of your service.
Yeah. So with Lutherans, there's such a variety of how we do worship. So I said, for the most part, Lutherans have a more traditional way of doing the worship service and the structure of it, but you will walk into Lutheran churches that are a little bit more contemporary in how they do worship, and a little less what we call liturgical or less structured. So for us, when it comes to our music, we kind of have a blended model where we sing traditional hymns, but we also sing contemporary songs as well. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Got some beautiful banners here. Tell us about the middle one.
Yeah, so this is the banner that we usually put up for what we call the Day of Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit comes down on Jesus' disciples. These are the followers that follow Jesus, the person that we recognize as the Son of God, the Messiah, in the Christian tradition. And so this is a picture of a dove, which in our scriptures, when Jesus was baptized, a dove came down from heaven in the Son of the Spirit upon Jesus. And these flames represent what happened on the day of Pentecost when people started speaking and there was flames coming out. So these kind of representations of the Holy Spirit in our church tradition, which is really what we see as God's Spirit that dwells among us. And so we have this on the day of Pentecost, but we were also planning an ordination for somebody who has become a pastor that grew up in our congregation. And so we'll put that up for an ordination service, which is our way of turning someone into a pastor. So,
okay.
So that's why the red is so important.
Yeah, on that note, as we walk to a different space, tell us a little bit about your vestment that you're wearing.
Okay, so
what it's called and what it signifies.
So this is called an alb, and the alb is basically something that clergy wear to kind of define themselves as clergy. Sometimes the newly baptized will also wear an alb to represent that purity, that new life in Jesus. So the stole here is only ordained people can actually wear the stole in the Lutheran tradition. So it's a sign of our ordination. And we wear different stoles during the seasons in the church. So the church has different seasons. This green one is called the season after Pentecost. So that's after the day of Pentecost. It's this long church season in the church. It's the longest one. That's called the Sundays after Pentecost. And so, or the season after Pentecost. And so we wear a green stole for this long period of time. So it's very good. There's other stoles too. The red one we wear very seldom. More ordination, confirmation Sundays. So it's like 2 or 3 times a year we wear those. And then other stoles represent other seasons that we have in the church here. So we have blue, purple, white. It's really colorful.
So I see you have some offices. Is this your office, Pastor?
Yes, this is my office.
Awesome. Tell us, I see you have a Master of Divinity.
Yes.
And you're called a pastor. So how do you become a pastor or a Master of Divinity?
That's a good question. Depends how old you are when you start. But for myself, you have to get an undergraduate degree in almost anything. So it doesn't have to be specified to religion. They just want you to have an undergrad degree from some university. So I went to King's University College, just the one right next to the Masters of Divinity, and got my Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. So in my final year, I felt the call to ministry. So what happens then is you apply to a master's program at the Lutheran Theological Seminary, for us in the West, in Saskatoon. And so that's where I went to become a pastor. And so it's oftentimes a 4 to 5 year degree program where you get a master's degree. Mine says Master of Divinity with honors because I also wrote a thesis, which was optional in that master's program. And so once you get your master's degree, you can now become a pastor, but you're not a pastor yet. You have to go through the final stage, and that is ordination. And I'll just take this down and show you what it looks like. But this is what is our ordination certificate. And so you go through an ordination rite where the bishop comes, lays hands on you, and that's when you become officially a pastor in the Lutheran Church. So similar to some of the other traditional churches, like Catholics and stuff. So it's a long process. It took me 10 years of post-secondary education before I became a pastor. So we're very well educated.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. You have a number of books there. Why don't you share us your favorite or one of the books that you enjoy out of your bookshelf?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a lot of good books on here. Instead of sharing a specific book, maybe I can just share what my favorite reading topics are. One is interfaith conversations, and especially Muslim Christian dialogue is something I've been very passionate about since I was young. And so I wrote a thesis on it, and this whole top shelf is basically books around that topic. Down here, my other biggest one is Understanding Jesus in that time period. So this row here is about what we call the historical Jesus stuff. So it gives us a chance to kind of pick apart and understand who Jesus was. I'm very fascinated by that, so I have lots of different books on that as well. Those are my two most passionate areas. And then, of course, as a Lutheran, if you want to hone in on this here, this is what all Lutheran pastors have to have on their shelves is books about Martin Luther, the person who's credited for the start of the Lutheran Church, and also the Reformation.
Okay. As we move into a different area, tell us, do Christians worship the same God as, say, Muslims in your interfaith community?
You know, that's a question that many different Lutheran pastors would have a different answer for. But for myself, I totally do feel that we worship the same God. We just have different ways of understanding that God.
Okay.
But I also believe that there are similarities in common ground that we have together as we try to understand God. So, yeah.
I notice on your board there that you have a number of, has all the commandments
Yeah.
What's the most important commandment?
Well, as Jesus taught us in the Christian tradition, it is the first commandment that we shall have no other gods, that God is our God and that we should worship God only. And then that relates to the next two commandments that also talk about that respect and love for God. And then second, and just as important, love our neighbor as ourselves, which is basically what 4 to 10 cover in the commandments, which is different ways how we can love one another. So, but my favorite commandment is you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, because I think that's one of the biggest challenging ones in our time, that we say a lot of things towards people that we probably shouldn't, and try and understand people for who they really are. Yeah.
How many Lutherans are in Calgary?
So there's different Lutheran communities in Calgary. There's the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, Lutherans. That's what we represent here at All Saints. And there's estimating here about seven or eight churches, I think, in Calgary that are of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Canada. There are also several Lutheran, what they call the Lutheran Church of Canada, which is originally from the Missouri Synod. And so with the Missouri Synod, there's a lot of Lutherans that represent that community here in Calgary as well. There's also the North American Lutheran Church, the Brethren Lutheran Church. So Lutherans are a variety of expressions. There's not just one Lutheran church.
Well, thank you, Wallace, for having us in your church and telling us a little bit about the Lutheran faith.
Yeah, thank you for being here and for allowing me to do that. And catch us anytime.
Okay, and all are welcome to come here?
Yes, we were very welcome in church, and definitely during this time, it's a little different, but we're still very welcoming, and would welcome anyone to come experience what a Lutheran worship service is like.
And your worship services are online right now. So
they're online, yeah, so you can access them through YouTube on our All Saints Lutheran Church Calgary YouTube station every Sunday at 10 o'clock. And afterwards, because they're also recorded, not just live streams. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to meeting again.